Joining me now are this year's two winners, Rebecca Sands and Tamsin Lonsdale-Smith, who won with their idea entitled From the Green Economy as a Russian Foreign Policy Challenge to Biomethane as an Opportunity for Market Participation. Hello, congratulations to both of you, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really glad to be here and very happy to have our ideas put on such a platform.
Thanks a lot for having us, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you so much. Speaking of your ideas, Tamsin, maybe you can give me a little idea about your idea. What was the topic of your winning idea?
So our idea had to do with, given the title, From the Green Economy as a Russian Foreign Policy Challenge to Biomethane as an Opportunity to Market Participation, we really wanted to bounce off this idea of Russia looking at green growth within Europe, which traditionally consumes a lot of natural gas that is imported from Russia, transition to green economies and seeing this as a challenge to their energy security, to really looking at how we can start developing biomethane in Russia and try to transition from biomethane, from natural gas to biomethane as the main fuel that they could be importing into Europe, possibly using infrastructure such as the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
So I wonder, Rebecca, why is your idea then relevant to the energy transition, and how can it contribute to climate objectives?
So I think we find it relevant in a few different ways. One is on the technical side of things. It's a very concrete way that we're using existing natural gas infrastructure to push along this green transition. And we also see it as something, we talk a lot about everyone needing to join together, to collaborate together, for stakeholders to come together and find solutions, both existing and new solutions. And for us, this is really a concrete project that it allows these huge regions to come together and build something together. And we think that's at the heart of the green energy transition, really is a mutually beneficial agreement where stakeholders have invested interest in finding solutions together. And I think our project is really built on these principles.
Thank you. And Tamsin, I wanted to ask, what conditions are necessary for this proposal to really be successful in Europe and in Russia? What are the challenges that it presents as well?
Sure. Well, if I could just backtrack and also answer the question that
Sure.
you were posing to Rebecca as well. So for me, why I think this is such an important thing for the energy transition is it just seemed crazy to me when I learned about the amount of untapped bioenergy potential in Russia. I saw that bioenergy I say bioenergy and not green gas and biomethane because there was a theoretical potential estimate that came out on bioenergy as a whole from several sectors within Russia, in the agricultural sector, the forestry, and the landfill sector, all of these sectors. And according to these studies from the researchers at the Kurchatov Institute in Russia, which we cited in our paper, only about 12% of the current technical bioenergy potential in Russia is actually being used today. Just 12%. So the potential figure that they found is equivalent to about 65% of the natural gas-fueled heating in the entire country, and 30% of the total heat and electricity production in Russia in 2018. So as you can imagine, this amount of untapped technical potential of bioenergy is massive. So we also thought about the fact that natural gas is sometimes viewed as a transition fuel, and we would like to think that biomethane could be a transition fuel of that transition fuel, if you see what I mean. So natural gas is still very polluting with an emissions factor that was recently revised upwards. And we need to be transitioning away from that as quickly as possible, which is why for us it was very important to focus on biomethane in this paper, particularly.
Thank you. So I would like to ask, though, what conditions do you need for this to take place in Europe and Russia? And what challenges are there?
Absolutely. I mean, there are political challenges that need to be addressed, of course. And the fact that the institutional barriers within the Russian government is not anti-renewable energies per se, but there hasn't been big enough focus. Most of the subsidies are allocated to fossil fuels at the moment. That being said, there are some subsidies available for grid connection for biogas. So that is not, there are some policy mechanisms in place, but those can be improved. Other conditions would be sort of improving the technical capacity as well in Russia. And I'm sure Rebecca can speak more about the European side of things, but in Russia, we need more expertise, which is something that we try to address with our technical and knowledge transfer program, in which we would be training professionals and partnering up with universities and technical universities and institutions in Russia to try and improve the amount of specialized trained professionals who would be able to implement these new biomethane green gas projects.
So, Rebecca, maybe you now can speak to what challenges might face the European side of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say as a whole, I think this applies to both countries, but I would say, it needs to be an agreement that's built on compliance and trust and an understanding that there's a mutual interest for an agreement that is both economically beneficial and achieves decarbonization goals at the same time. So it's really an agreement of all parties in a situation that has already had a really tough road politically and economically and regulatory wise, but that has real potential and that both parties see the potential in that. So I think from the EU side, obviously there would have to be a significant amount of trust and understanding of what the agreement is and how it's going to be carried out. And I would say also a regulatory environment that's flexible enough in Russia, a regulatory environment that's flexible enough to be able to apply the EU context to Russia, understanding that it's not the same region, it's not the same kind of structure. So the lessons learned and the best practices need to be applied to Russia, but they also needs to be flexible enough where it can adapt to the context of Russia's own energy landscape. So the main challenges are technical, economic, market-based, and institutional in nature. So taking taking what we can from the EU context and applying it to Russia needs to remain flexible in new circumstances. And I think the last thing is, at least in terms of the transition from natural gas to biomethane, while natural gas is still being provided to the EU, I think one of the main ways that this will be successful is if there are provisions about methane leakage and control and third-party monitoring in terms of the continued use of natural gas up until 2030.
So I want to ask you both, and Tamsin, maybe you can answer first. Do you have concrete next steps in mind? Like what comes next exactly? Do you know?
So we have many different ideas sort of bouncing around between the two of us. And, we would love any kind of external input on our ideas. That would be wonderful. One thing that I would like to research further is I mentioned the technical potential of bioenergy. I think more studies need to be done on what proportion of this could be feasibly turned into biomethane and green gas. I also would really like to see geospatial studies, so mapping studies to check out proximity analyses to see how in Russia, how close do we have these potential biomethane and green gas feedstock sites to existing natural gas infrastructure, and how costly would it be to connect these things. One of the barriers, of course, is that Russia is a big country, infrastructure isn't always there, but trying to pinpoint the most cost-effective feedstock points that are near that existing infrastructure. And I think, there are subsidies for that grid connection cost. So that is something that should be utilized, and we should find out where those cost-effective points of connection are.
Thanks, Tamsin. And Rebecca, briefly before we have to go, concrete next steps from your perspective.
Yeah, I think, we came about this idea very organically. We started to conduct research. We knew that we wanted to write something for this challenge. And we based on the research that we did, we came about the idea very organically. And it kind of just, rolled downhill from there. But this was really a first pass at this idea. We conducted some initial research and we put it into a project for the BETD, and obviously, it got some great feedback. And to those that we've spoken with thus far, the idea is very interesting. And we've also had feedback that it's a worthwhile project to keep working on and to continue to, expand the research, expand the potential. For example, the PTA agreement that we suggest in the second half of the paper, which is really the concrete way that a project like this could be enabled in the context of the EU and Russia and their energy relationship to each other. So we're really looking for any opportunity that allows us to keep working on this project, whether it's a bit of funding or an institution that likes the idea, who's willing to kind of take it a bit further and see what else we can do with it, really, if it can become more of a concrete proposal.
I have to say it is really fabulous to be here with you both and to listen to the passion with which you speak about your project. Thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today on the second day of the BETD. Congratulations again. We have Rebecca Sands and Tamsin Lonsdale Smith, the winners of the Green Recovery Challenge.